All right, we're live. We're ready to go. I thought we should talk a little bit about something that's been in the news and will continue to be in the news. And oddly enough, it's something that comes out of Minnesota. So, Minnesota, the legislature, the Democratic-controlled legislature, Democrat majority, passed a bevy of bills over the course of their legislative session that were really, in a lot of ways, the a progressive's dream. And so they kudos to them. They got a lot passed. Now, one of the things they passed was free college. This is, of course, something that's been talked about a lot nationally. Joe Biden wanted to by executive order, just wave his hand and say, "I can bypass Congress and just free college for everyone." And that obviously didn't work. That was struck down, thankfully. Free college there are so many things wrong with it. It's hard to even start, and that's not what this little live video is about necessarily. But number one, it's not fair. It's not fair to people who don't go to college. It's not fair to people who went to college but worked their butts off to be able to pay for it. The people that have just say recently finished paying off all of their college loans, the many thousands, tens of thousands and beyond dollars in student debt, finally got that paid off. And yay, now they get to pay for somebody else's college. I also like the term free college. It's not free. I mean, if you can get the professors to teach for free and the electric companies to power the buildings for free and the janitors to clean for free and so on and so forth, then I guess it could be free college. But even then, there is maintenance, I suppose. We could get companies to donate supplies and materials and so forth. Bottom line is, it's not free. Somebody's going to pay for it. So what we are doing is simply shifting the burden from kids who want a college education to everyone else. There are a number of other things wrong with it. It will increase the demand for college. It's going to, I mean, right now it's just so pitiful. In North Dakota, 6 years to get a 4-year degree is common, in part because, the loans are so available, the grants and scholarships that the legislature so, what's the term, compassionately, beneficently offer to students throughout North Dakota. It's, the money, there's so much money there. And there's not the economic pressure to get it done in 4 years. There's more pressure to kind of hang out and have fun and explore and develop yourself. And lo and behold, 6 years. So now it's free. Why would you stop at 6 years? You may as well go to 8. And why would you stop at 1 degree? You may as well get 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 degrees. I mean, just be a student in perpetuity. Why not? I had a good time at UND. I'm sure that would be a lot of fun. And it also shifts. We desperately need people in the trades. Someone getting a certificate in as an electrician or a plumber is going to make a bunch more money and have a much better job security than many of the people that are getting 4-year degrees. They come out and they're not using the degree anyway. So let's cut to the chase. Minnesota passed this bill. They said, well, we're not going to wait to see if Joe Biden's thing is going to withstand the court scrutiny. And so we are going to pass our own. They have the North Star Promise, I think it's called. So it's free tuition and fees for students that come from families that have $80,000 or less in annual income. Now, I mean, that's great for them. Look, people in Minnesota voted for who they voted for. There are ramifications. And so whether you think it's good or bad, people in Minnesota, their students, if they come from families that make less than $80,000, free college. Now, the college presidents in North Dakota are having a conniption. They are freaking out. The North Dakota university system is freaking out. Now, why, you might ask, would the North Dakota university system be freaking out for something that Minnesota is doing? Well, it turns out that we in North Dakota let me rephrase that. It turns out that the colleges in North Dakota rely on Minnesota students a great deal. You have to keep in mind that the State Board of Higher Education, the university system, the college presidents, they all view North Dakota colleges as fiefdoms, as these little kingdoms that they want to expand without regard to cost. They do not concern themselves with the cost to North Dakota taxpayers, and I'll explain that a little bit more in a minute. They want to expand and increase the number of students and programs and so on and so forth, because the bigger their system becomes, the more powerful they become, the more money they control, the more players they can rub elbows with, and so forth. So whereas the North Dakota university system was supposed to be for North Dakota students, to provide North Dakota students with a good college education. Now you could say, well, hey, why not have Minnesota students? I mean, great. It makes it so we can offer more programs that North Dakota students might not be able to get, or they might have to go to another state to get them, or more likely, they just wouldn't be able to pick 5 different colleges in North Dakota to get that one program. There might be just one place. Well, you probably know this, but we subsidize, we North Dakota taxpayers pay for a good portion of these Minnesota students' cost of higher education. I studied it extensively for a bill I put forth in 2017. And at that time, at least, after Minnesota students were paying their reduced tuition, and after the state of Minnesota kicked in a little bit of their money, North Dakota taxpayers were footing the bill for every Minnesota student to the tune of about $6,000 per student per year. Now that's for NDSU and UND, and that's where most of the Minnesota students are going. And NDSU actually has more Minnesota students than they have North Dakota students. That's right. North Dakota taxpayers are supporting and paying for an institution to educate at North Dakota taxpayer cost Minnesota students. Now, why did I say UND and NDSU? Well, because many of the other colleges actually contribute more. They have the same cost of subsidizing, the same tuition for Minnesota students as they do for North Dakota, whereas NDSU and UND have just a little bit of a premium. More than that, many of these colleges, Lake Region in Devil's Lake and Bottineau and Minot, will give there's a various combination of these things that I'm about to say, but they will give Minnesota students the same tuition rate. They will give all Canadian students, hey, Canada, come down. We're going to subsidize you to the same degree that we subsidize North Dakota, and even all other states in the United States get subsidized. And so then we're talking more like each student gets $8,000 in North Dakota taxpayer money to come. So then it actually does become kind of a big deal, right? When you recognize that we are paying for the education, college education, not of just North Dakota students, but of students in Minnesota to a large degree, and then all across the United States and even Canada. One of the things is that we can say, well, but North Dakota sends students out to other states as well. Well, but we bring in way more students than we send out, because the students we send out, what I'm referring to is a program where the North Dakota students get reduced tuition. But it's not just a one-on-one. North Dakota taxpayers spend about $50-60 million a year on subsidizing tuition for out-of-state students, the number of students above the number of students in North Dakota that get subsidized. So it's not, if it were just a break even, great, we'd be saving $50-60 million a year, but nope, this is on top of that. So I want you to keep that in mind. NDSU incoming class, 52% of their incoming class is from Minnesota. They may as well call it, instead of NDSU, they may as well call it MNSU, because more Minnesota students than North Dakota. Now, they will tell you that if you look at the full student body, there's more North Dakota students, but that's because they're counting the Minnesota students that temporarily have North Dakota residency status as North Dakotans. Okay, now, I'm just going to take a look here. I've got a couple of things I wanted to share with you on the screen, but I don't know all the technicalities yet. Another thing I want you to know when we look at this is that the college enrollment is going down over the last 10 years. 10 years ago, we had 48,833 as a head count. That includes part-time students. If you want to jam them all together to say, okay, what's the full-time equivalent? There were 39,089. If you look last year, that dropped down from 39,089 to 33,164. So it's been dropping down. Our students are dropping down, and the university system knows that they're going to drop down more. They know that there is a precipitous drop in students throughout the United States. And keep in mind, we rely on other states to fill our colleges. We do that by enticing them with the North Dakota taxpayer dollars, but they know it's going to go down. So let's take a look at the spending. Even though we know that enrollment is going down, I want you to be aware that spending increased for higher education. We went from $2.8 billion and we jacked it up almost another $500 million. We increased spending $500 million, even though student enrollment is going down. So now we are at about $3.3 billion for higher education. It's quite phenomenal. There's another aspect here. The number of employees working for higher education, right? The number, remember, we just talked about how the number of students is dropping down. You would think that the number of employees should probably drop down as well. No, that's not true. We increased the number of employees by 72. We added 72 university employees to jump up the total number to 6,606 employees. 6,606 employees that are helping to provide Minnesota with higher education, and then also North Dakota. To me, that's phenomenal. Did you know that the number of employees for higher ed is over 40% of all state employees? You look at every agency in North Dakota, governor's office, treasurer's office, highway patrol, everything in state government. And the people working for the university system comprise over 40% of all employees. Phenomenal to me. Okay, so next we have the this information, by the way, that I'm presenting now. Again, I wish I could share the slides with you, but I didn't get my stuff together to learn how to do that. This was presented at a North Dakota State Board of Higher Education meeting just a couple of days ago. And what they are saying is that we are going to lose Minnesota students. And they're projecting the numbers. Bottom line is they're expecting that 50% of the people that are coming from Minnesota that would qualify for free tuition would then not come to North Dakota, or would leave North Dakota and get free college education. Now, I think 50% is probably low. If you're coming from a family making 80,000 or less and you can get free college, I don't know who wouldn't do that. But what they say is there will be about 740 students lost if half of the eligibles go away. 740 students lost. What they say is that the tuition that they're going to lose is about $7 million. The fees are about $1 million. And then the funding that they get from the state is about $4.5 million. Okay, so they are considering that they are going to lose, this is revenue loss of about $13 million. That's just for 1 year. What's interesting is you have to, again, put it in perspective. For us as taxpayers, I want you to consider that $4.5 million from the funding. The college people are saying they're losing that money. What it actually is we aren't spending that money. We are saving $4.5 million if these 740 students don't go to North Dakota colleges. Okay, now, again, about $13 million they say we are going to lose, meaning colleges are going to lose in revenue. Now, their solution is, I kid you not, I know you know what the answer is already. The solution is, liberal, blue, Democrat-controlled legislature in Minnesota did the Joe Biden plan to give free college. This is catastrophic, and they use that word. The president of NDSU used the term catastrophic, and we have to do something. The legislature must do something. We need emergency. We need, and I'm telling you, we're going to show some of the video here in a sec. I watched the whole meeting. We have to do something. And what they talked about, now here is what I would be saying if I was on the Board of Higher Education to the college presidents. They're saying we need money. Okay, they're saying money is going to take care of this. This is their only possible solution. They're looking at different levels of money that can take care of it, but that's their solution. We'll talk about that in a second. My solution is, okay, well, we are going to lose more Minnesota students than we thought we were going to. We already knew we were going to because Minnesota enrollment is going down overall. Minnesota students enrolling in college, no matter where they go, is going down, and it's predicted that it will continue going down for several years. And in fact, most states in the nation are going to go down for several years. So we have known for many years that student enrollment that has been declining for the last 10 years will continue to decline. So in preparation for that, and knowing that now it's going to be accelerated, what we need to do is use some common sense. We are going to, instead of expanding our footprint, instead of building new buildings, instead of growing, we need to consolidate. We need to be smart. We need to be efficient. Instead of hiring a bunch more people, we need to have a freeze on that. We need to allow attrition to happen. People that are ready to retire, let them retire. We need to become smaller to adapt to a smaller student body population. That's what would make sense. That's what makes sense to you, to me, to other taxpayers, not to these guys, because they don't look at it from a taxpayer standpoint. This is their gravy train, baby. This is their gravy train. So what their solution is, we need to pay for free tuition for the Minnesota students. So North Dakota, taxpayers in North Dakota are already paying to subsidize, I know many of you didn't know this, subsidize Minnesota students. Again, about $6,000 per year per student if they're going to NDSU or UND, about $8,000 per student per year if they're going to several of the others like Regents or Minot or Bottineau. But we're going to do that. Red state, right? Conservatives in North Dakota. Yeah, we love the Joe Biden Democrat Minnesota plan. We love it. We're going to offer free college, but not Minnesota. Minnesota Democrats at least had the good sense to say we are going to offer free college to Minnesota students, not North Dakota. No, not the college presidents, not the little kings with their little kingdoms. No, because they have no regard for your money. Zero. So what they say is we need to get money from the legislature, who gets it from you. We're going to take it and we are going to replicate the Minnesota free tuition program for these kids from Minnesota who are coming from families making $80,000 or less per year. Can you believe that? Now, what they say is, hey, here's the amount. I have a slide here. The amount needed to cover tuition and fees after all of the other grant and aid scholarships. At NDSU, it would only cost you $4 million, okay, at NDSU for those students. Another $2.2 million at UND, so on and so forth. The total is $7 million. Okay, so on top of the many tens of millions that we are already spending to subsidize Minnesota students. This will cost you another $7 million in taxpayer money, your money. Now, fortunately, they understand that the politics of this are not that great if you are going to only pay for Minnesota students. So then they're saying, yeah, you know what we want to do, their goal is to just have free tuition for Minnesota students because they don't want to lose them. But they realize that that would be stupid because there will be a huge backlash from North Dakotans, and there should be. And so then what they're saying is, well, okay, listen, we need to offer the free college tuition to Minnesota students. That doesn't look good. So we need to also do it to North Dakota students, and then really just all of the students in the United States. I'm not joking. Watch the video. I'll put a link in here somewhere. Watch the video. So what we're looking at now is free college tuition for anyone in the United States, including North Dakota, if you make $80,000 or less. This is what, now this isn't a formal proposal. The college presidents and the State Board of Higher Education are coming together, but watch the video. You will see this is what everyone is acknowledging is what they need to do. They know they're meeting again in 2 weeks. They have a committee to get on this. They're going to put this into a format that they propose. Mark my words, you're going to see there's not consolidation. There is not increased efficiencies. There's not a freeze on hiring. There is not a moratorium on building new buildings. There's nothing. No. There is, how can we get the most money out of the people of North Dakota to give free college away so that we can keep our little kingdoms at the maximal size possible? What they say is the cost, annual cost every year, over $17 million. In addition to the 50, 60 or more $million that North Dakota taxpayers are already paying. Another, adding insult to injury, another $17.25 million that they are going to ask the legislature to provide so that they can retain their fiefdoms. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you is, I think it's President Cook is his name. He's the president of NDSU. Let's play this here.
A lot. If and when Minnesota does that, we're going to have to think differently about this. Minnesota, obviously move forward with it. So that would be one thought. I like the idea of thinking about ways to fund the difference so we could have some sort of North Dakota promise, but I get that it's also very tricky politically. I mean, I get it. We're talking about helping Minnesota kids have access to higher education, which, from kind of more underserved background, which is I think great, but what about the North Dakota kids, right? And so it gets very complicated. So given the complexity of it, I hope we can kind of make this a big priority for the board, and certainly maybe the interim higher ed committee, maybe certain leaders of the legislature to tackle it.
All right, so there's a lot more to the meeting. I'd love to have a longer video. I wanted you to be aware that as crazy as Minnesota is, and by that I mean Minneapolis primarily, because they control most of the state. But as crazy as what they have done legislatively, we've been able to say, well, that's Minnesota. We're actually looking to do something worse in North Dakota. This is early. This is ahead of the curve. There's not a formal proposal, but I tell you, there was no discussion in the meeting about pulling back to deal with the decreasing number of students, which they knew was coming anyway. It's just now a little accelerated. There's no talk of that. There's only talk about money, about getting money to offer free tuition to Minnesota students, and then, because it's politically necessary, to North Dakota students and all of the United States. These are the thoughts and behavior of people who have no regard for your money, who have no regard for the taxes that you pay. They have no regard for you. Y'all know that I'm working on property tax. I just want to say, as an example, people say, well, where are we going to get the money to replace property tax? This is just one example. There's seriously enough money that the Board of Higher Education and the college presidents believe that it's a very real possibility, and mark my words, it is a very real possibility that we will pay for free college for Minnesota and the entire United States. That's how much money we have. It's just one little thing. The depth to which North Dakota spends money, your money, unnecessarily on wasteful things, extravagantly, like drunken sailors, as they say, would blow your mind. We have the money. We need to have some tax relief is what we need. And I just wanted to bring this out because, number one, it supports the idea that we have the money, that we are spending stupidly. And I wanted you to get ahead of this. Maybe you want to contact your legislators. Maybe if you have access to any of the people on the Board of Higher Education, maybe you want to contact them. But if there isn't some pushback, if they're not feeling the heat, I guarantee you, North Dakota is going to be, in my opinion, a laughing stock. So desperate to retain the money-sucking higher education system that we have. And when I say money-sucking, I'm talking from North Dakota taxpayers, that they will actually do this. And I want to tell you one thing, by the way, important to know. They will tell you, and they did in this meeting, that 42% of the Minnesota students that come here, that graduate here, will stay on. They what they say, they're phrasing it in a way that's really crafty. These political people are. 42% will have their first job in North Dakota. That's fine and dandy. But there are a couple things you need to know. They conveniently leave out the fact that only about 60% of students who enroll graduate. That number changes. So there's a whole lot of free tuition, meaning we paid for it, to people who aren't going to graduate, right? There's 6 years of college to get a 4-year degree. All 6 years of those we are going to be paying for. Now, 60% of those Minnesota students are going to graduate, and maybe upwards of 40% if they're telling the truth. I think they're citing statistics. They're taking, I think they just did a poll or a survey of students. But what they conveniently leave out is that there was a formal tracking study performed, and 20% of Minnesota students will be in North Dakota 4 years after they graduate. 20%. 18% will be in North Dakota at 6 years. So when you look at this retention of students, because all these folks look at universities not as places of education for North Dakota students. They do not. I'm serious. I'm not exaggerating. That is not what colleges are for them. It is maybe third on the list. Number one is economic development. It truly is economic development. That's the way they look at this. And number two is workforce development and economic diversification. So they continue to fool themselves as well as everyone else on these statistics. 42%. It's ridiculous. It's 18% will stay on. 18%, not 18 to 20% of the students that we subsidized. 18 to 20% of the students that graduate, which is 60% of all of the students, which means that about 12 to 14% of all of the Minnesota students that you and I are going to pay for are actually going to stay in North Dakota for a significant period of time and take up jobs in North Dakota. Those are the real numbers. They're not concerned about providing real numbers. They're concerned with providing convincing numbers because this is their gravy train. So with that, we'll be out here. I will sign off. Feel free to contact me. We'll try and do this a little bit more. It will be interesting what comes up And hopefully this will get smashed down. It's the most ridiculous thing I have heard in a long time. And believe me, I've heard some ridiculous things. We'll see you later.